It's an honor for us to present Keven Hendricks from the US with this presentation about the Darknet. Welcome, Keven.
Thank you for having me. I guess good afternoon, everybody. Here on the East Coast of the United States, it is about 8 a.m., so it would be good morning for me. And I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but hopefully this live stream will go as planned and there won't be any unnecessary interruptions. But like with live TV, anything can happen. So let's keep our fingers crossed. So today, obviously, I'm going to be talking about a tour to the Darknet and everything that encompasses. So before we get started, you should probably know who I am, right? I'm active law enforcement here in the United States. I've been with a municipal police department in the United States since 2007. So I've been in law enforcement for 15 years. In my career, I've had the distinguished pleasure of working with two of the federal partners here in the United States. The first being the FBI Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force for 4 years, and then with the Drug Enforcement Administration for 3 years, mainly focused on cyber crimes and the dark web. I'm a certified cybercrime examiner with the National White Collar Crime Center, as well as a certified cybercrime investigator. And I'm also a certified cryptocurrency investigator through the Blockchain Intelligence Group. Currently, I am an instructor with two companies that teach law enforcement here in the United States, Street Cop Training and Federal Resources. I'm recognized as a subject matter expert by the CSIAC, and I am a member of the High Tech Crime Investigators Association. Last year, I founded the UBIVIS Project, ubivisproject.org/stopdarkwebdrugs.com. And I'm currently a member of the United States Secret Service, New York, New Jersey Cyber Fraud Task Force. I'm a published author with the FBI Law Enforcement Bulletin. 2 years ago now, my Investigating Scam Phone Calls article was published about how law enforcement can investigate voice over IP services. And this is me being recognized by the CSIAC in August as a subject matter expert in the field. So let's get started. You'll hear the term dark web. Dark web is basically the same thing as dark nets. So don't get confused when I say dark web, dark net. It's kind of synonymous with each other. But what's the stigma that we have, right, when you go on the dark web? You're going to accidentally infect your computer with viruses, or you're going to accidentally expose your network to be invaded by hackers, or my favorite, you're going to come across a site that will get you killed or have the authorities knocking on your door very early in the morning. Now, where do these impressions come from? They come from pop culture, right? We have shows like Mr. Robot, movies like Unfriended Dark Web, series dedicated to the earlier days of the dark web, like the show Darknet, appropriately named. And we also have movies here in the United States. We've kind of given Ross Ulbricht more of a celebrity status than I feel he deserves. But nonetheless, the Silk Road. Can't talk about the dark web without talking about the Silk Road. And we have a #1 bestseller about the Silk Road, American Kingpin, dedicated to what Mr. Ross Ulbricht did in the early 2010s. So let's get it out of the way, right? What is the dark web? So you can't talk about the internet, the dark web, the deep web without seeing some sort of analogy to an iceberg here, right? So we have what's called the surface web, which by estimate makes up about 4 to 5% of the content on the World Wide Web as it is. And then you have something called the deep web. So the deep web is quintessentially not accessible to surface web crawlers, according to this graphic here. I like to equate it to my bank account, right? I can go to my bank website via Google, via Bing, or just typing in the address of my bank website. But I can't go to my account on that bank website unless I enter certain credentials, unless I go behind a enhanced, I guess, security feature that's on that website. And that's really what the deep web is. It's unindexed content. There's a lot of stuff out there on the internet that isn't visible from the surface. You have to go inside the site, so on and so forth. Then there at the bottom is the lovely dark web. By estimate, people believe it's either between 6%, maybe less than that. But the dark web is encompassed by darknets, and that requires specific software or browsers to access these sites. So when you see Tor encrypted sites, that's mainly one darknet. As we will go on in this presentation, you will see there are other darknets out there. Something you have to understand, though, is dark web usage has increased 300% since 2018. Okay, it's getting bigger and bigger every day. For the Tor browser alone, the Onion router, there's approximately 2 million users that utilize it. There are other darknets and services out there that are becoming users of the Tor relay infrastructure, but are not part of the Tor network itself. And I will talk about a specific service known as ZeroNet later in this presentation. So again, what is the dark web? So we go to Wikipedia. They never tell lies. According to Wikipedia, the dark web is worldwide web content that exists on darknets, overlay networks that utilize the internet but require specific software configurations or authorization to access. Again, these aren't separate internets. This is the same exact internet that you use daily, the same internet that I'm using currently. So when we think about the dark web, there are really three things that come to mind. These three darknets here: the Onion router, Tor, I2P, the Invisible Internet Project, and Freenet. So Freenet is really about file sharing, and I'm not going to go into Freenet in depth today, but I will talk about Tor and I2P. So the Tor browser, I'm sure some of you have heard of it. You can download it from the torproject.org. They're based here in the United States. They're a 501 research education nonprofit founded by computer scientists Roger Dingledine, Nick Mathewson, and 5 others. Its primary responsibility here in the United States is maintaining the software for the Tor anonymity network. It's the most common of the dark web browsers, and it's the most utilized. Again, like I just said, 2 million plus users daily. Most of the darknet markets and the contraband, the illicit things that we think of the darknet are hosted on Tor, and they're hosted on .onion domains. So I2P, the Invisible Internet Project, you can get it at geti2p.net. It's an anonymous network layer that allows censorship-resistant peer-to-peer communication, anonymous connections that are achieved by encrypting the user's traffic, sending it through a volunteer-run network of 55,000 computers distributed throughout the world. In my opinion, I2P is the second most popular browser for the dark webs. It requires a little bit more enhanced configuration than Tor does. So a lot of people kind of stay away from it because they are kind of intimidated with how to use it. When we talk about the underworld currents, per se, of the dark web, there was a darknet market called Libertas. They moved themselves from the Tor network exclusively to I2P because they claimed that Tor was broken. And ultimately, they wound up going offline because a lot of their customers don't know how to use I2P, and henceforth, nobody was going to their market. When you see .I2P domains, those are called EAP sites. So if you see a address .I2P at the end, like you would see .com or .net, you are talking about an EAP site. You're talking about I2P. So Freenet, this is really about file sharing, in my opinion. A peer-to-peer platform for censorship-resistant communication. It uses decentralized, distributed data to keep and deliver information. A suite of free software communicating on the web without fear of censorship. It's peer-to-peer based, so free sites are part of the Freenet. Again, I don't want to get too deep into this because I'm going to be talking about 3 other darknets today. So we have these new and up-and-coming peer-to-peer anonymizing services like NewNet and ZeroNet. So what do all these browsers have in common? The more users equal more anonymity, right? Tor is the biggest, the most stable, and it has thousands of servers and volunteers for nodes around the world. So for this webinar, we're going to focus on Tor, the Onion router, I2P, and ZeroNet. So let's get this out of the way, right? Who is using the dark web? My one joke, script kiddies. Dun-dun-dun. Okay. Or this guy, right? In the hood, running multiple computers with terminal screens, running lines of code faster than you can imagine. No, that's not true. The average users of darknet markets and the dark web in general, they do not possess a high level of computing skills, okay? Let's break that stigma right now. So in the same respect, who can investigate these dark web crimes, right? This guy right here, you got to be a forensic examiner. You got to know a lot about computers. You got to have a lot of skills to actually investigate the dark web. No, you do not, okay? So what if I told you today that you can investigate dark web cases? Would you call me a liar? Well, here's the first thing you need to know. The dark web isn't something that you should be afraid of. It's going to become more and more involved in cases as the future goes on. especially since the dark web, in my opinion, expands with more users every single day. So to understand how the dark web works, you really have to understand how the internet works in general. So there's two regulatory bodies that really control the internet as we know it. One is ICANN, ICANN, and the other one is, well, this is the United States, ARIN, the American Registry for Internet Numbers, but they're part of the regional internet registries. So these are the governing bodies of how the internet is able to continue. These are the people that assign the IP addresses for websites around the world, the regional internet registries. And in the same respect, ICANN are the ones that assign the names. So hacktivists.org resolves to a specific IP address. That goes through a registry process with a registrar and a registrant. This is a good analogy of how the internet works, why I'm able to type in specific addresses to websites, and if it's running, it can come back to my computer with ease. So again, I just explained what a regional internet registry was. Now, I know what you're thinking, Kevin, if it's so easy to track down these websites, how come we can't take down these dark web markets, these dark web forums that are dedicated to contraband? Well, now we've had the advent of what's called blockchain DNS. So I'm sure some of you have heard about what the blockchain is, specifically when it comes to cryptocurrency. Not to get too deep into the woods on that, but think of it as there isn't a centralized site where the centralized place where the site is hosted. There's multiple sites, multicasting for these sites to come that keep the site online. That is what makes it a little bit more difficult to investigate these markets, these forums, these shops on the dark web that are hosting contraband. So you'll see things on the ClearNet today, like .bit, .zil, .eth, which runs off of the Ethereum platform. But these are all part of DNS blockchain. You could register your own sites, Ethereum name service, Unstoppable Domains, Namecoin, Handshake. So this is, if you have Windows, there's an easy prompt to track where websites are hosted. This is me going to hackcon.org from my computer, right? We see hackcon.org resolves to a specific IP, and then my traffic is routed through my main router, the 10.0.01, and then I go out into the world, and eventually my traffic lands on the website of where I want to go. With Tor, there is an augmentation to how your traffic gets routed, and that's part of what's called the Tor circuit. So you will see me in the beginning, and then you will see me going to DuckDuckGo at the end, and my traffic is routed through 3 hop points or nodes. That's what's called the Tor circuit. So my computer connects to my internet service provider, and then my internet service provider connects to the Tor network. Then the Tor circuit consists of an entry, middle, and exit node. The exit node is where my traffic resolves to when I'm trying to go to a specific website. It's important to understand I could go to any website I want with Tor. I don't have to only go to .onion domains. So why this is ingenious. If an entry node is compromised, the malicious party can see me, but not where I'm going. They can only look back at me. They can see my real, I guess, computer, my real IP address. But if an exit node is compromised, I can see where you're going, but not who you are because of the middle guard. And then I know there's a line from that show, Mr. Robot. If you control the exit nodes, you control all the traffic. Again, that's speculative, but it's something we could talk about offline if we want to really dive deep into it. So this was earlier, actually this past Sunday. This is part of the Tor metrics, right? Who's using Tor daily? Again, we see the numbers are over 2 million. So there's over 2 million users of Tor daily over the past couple months. And the United States makes up over 20% of that Tor traffic for the end users. So to understand, Tor being based here in the United States also has the most users. So since it's the most stable and the most widely used Darknet, the most illicit activity in Darknet markets are hosted on the .onion domains. It would only make more sense to do that. If I was connected to a Darknet that wasn't stable, that didn't have a lot of traffic, no one would be seeing my site. So where do you find these links, right? Well, there's sites on the ClearNet like Darknet Live. They host a market list. Dark.fail, arguably one of the most popular ones. They host the market list as well as stable mirrors for those sites. And then there's Darknet One, darknet1.com. also hosts the links for you to readily access those sites. Now, when you want to really dive into what content there is on the dark web, when you talk about illicit markets, the underworld, the criminal underworld, I would say that carding, credit card fraud is probably the biggest. It's the most readily accessible. It's the cheapest. You have Best Carding World, which is a forum like this where people basically trade and sell cards. You also have TorDex, and you have sites dedicated like TorBuy here with Bitcoin mixers, gift cards, electronics, money counterfeits, so on and so forth. Then you have these marketplaces, which are these are actually stores, which are shops, which are different than marketplaces. These are really just hosted for individual people that are selling versus marketplaces, which I will show later. But again, a lot of stuff dedicated to fraud, ways to get around, I guess, lockouts with Apple, so on and so forth. Paste Tor is kind of like Pastebin, except for Tor. Then you have like services that people offer on their own sites, right? This is one for like a hacking service to get into people's Instagrams, to get into people's messaging apps. Then you have Darknet, which has really become the most popular darknet, in my opinion, since there's been a lot of darknet markets that went down. But you have sites like Darknet, which put vendors in their own little categories if they have a previous presence on expropriated darknet markets. Like this vendor right here, Mr. Big Bumps with a Z, he was a previous vendor on White House Market, a now defunct marketplace. And you can see that this person has been around for a while. Vice City is still up and running. Again, you can get anything that you want on these sites. Drugs, fraud, digital, hacking, so on and so forth. Yakuza Market is a very stable, not very popular market in my opinion, but look at anti-vax, blank fake COVID CDC vaccine card with instructions for only $5. But that's a pretty good deal. Then you have shops like this for fake IDs, right? This is a market, Hermes, or Hermes, depending on how you want to pronounce it. They have a lot of weapons for sale. This is an up-and-coming market, Quest Market. Look what you can get for very cheap prices. Again, if you look at the credit cards, very cheap. Light Money is its own shop dedicated to fraud with specific card carriers like Visa. Then you have, again, these forums, CyberCarders, Vault, which is up and coming. And then you have Club to Card, which is probably been one around the longest. And then you have Brian's Club, which I'm sure some of you, if you investigate fraud, have heard of. Again, when I say the content of the underworld on the dark web, I feel that fraud, specifically when it comes to credit card fraud, gift card fraud, that really is what eats up most of the content. The darknet markets themselves dedicated to drugs and other contraband, I feel, are overshadowed by the fraud. So there's also these forums like Dread, and in my opinion, this leads to favoritism on the dark web. Specifically, Dread wants to have as much traffic to it as well, so they will also host links to your site like Heineken Express, Bohemia, so on and so forth, if you contribute money and you post on Dread. Now, again, I just talked a lot about Tor, and you're sitting there going, Kevin, well, what about the other darknet markets? What about the other darknets that you spoke about earlier? Well, I2P. I actually love I2P. I think it's great. Depending on who you talk to, there's the school of thought that I2P is the real darknet, since you cannot access sites on the clear net with I2P. You can only go to .I2P sites. But it's 20 years old as of last year. Well, a happy belated 20th anniversary. But it looks like that some of these sites have not been updated in 20 years, and I'll show you. So there's an estimated 35 to 45,000 I2P users daily, based on the network traffic and size in and of itself. That makes I2P the second largest darknet. Many darknets now darknet markets now are actually offering a presence on both .onion domains on Tor and also .I2P domains. Hermes market that I showed earlier is one of those markets, as well as the new Alphabet. So what's interesting about I2P is you basically have to contribute in order to be accessing these sites, right? You have to dedicate specific bandwidth from your computer, from your internet service provider in order for I2P to really work for you. Again, with the configuration that it's required, this is kind of intimidating to some people who might be the end users of these darknets, and they just want to go online and buy drugs, so they won't go to I2P. This is one of my favorite sites on I2P, not Bob. Who is Bob, right? Why doesn't Bob live here? But it shows you the status of specific I2P domains, if they're online, if they're offline. Same thing with stats.i2p home. Again, when I talked about a site being I2P itself being 20 years old, it looks like this site, the layout takes me back to 2001. But again, these sites are online and they are stable. When you talk about file sharing, MooWire on I2P has become increasingly more popular, anonymous file sharing. Again, this requires a lot of configuration on the end user's end, which can be intimidating to the average user of the darknet. So like with Tor, you can go to ClearNet sites. You can't do that with I2P without an out proxy. Purukishi, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, is an out proxy for I2P. When you run through Purukishi, you can actually go to .coms, .nets, so on and so forth. But what's also good is you do not have to use I2P without downloading it. So I2phidesme.me is a service where you can actually use the I2P network through the site and not actually have to download the I2P software onto your computer, which could be useful if you are intimidated by I2P. Again, the stability of the network really dictates how your browsing experience is going to be. I really recommend going to this site first before you actually try to use I2P if you're unfamiliar with it. And now ZeroNet and the rising popularity of ZeroNet. So as I talked about earlier, ZeroNet is one of the newer darknets. It actually started in 2015, and it has continued to grow. In my opinion, it has a great graphic user interface. And when I talked about services that actually utilize the Tor infrastructure, ZeroNet is one of them. So when you actually open up ZeroNet, you'll see that you're connecting to part of the Onion router network, but you're not actually on the Tor browser. And that'll leave you scratching your head a little bit. But again, this graphic user interface is very well done. You have ZeroTalk, you have ZeroMail, you have all these sites that are basically run off of public key versus an actual address to go to. So you can see your stats on how you use ZeroNet through the graphic user interface. Again, ZeroMail, ZeroID, Thunderwave, these are all part of what ZeroNet is. So when I connected to it on Sunday, you'll see that there was really 1,900 peers online. Again, when you talk about darknet usage, people are going to use what they feel most comfortable with. Tor, for example, has been around for a very long time. And because it's been around for a very long time, there's a lot more users to it. There's a lot more people that are comfortable with it. With ZeroNet, obviously, it's only been around for 6-7 years now. There's not a lot of people that are preferential to it. These were the amount of people that were online when I was online on Sunday. So you can see, there's not a lot of volume when we compare to the Tor network that has 2.5 million users daily. Or ZeroNet, or I2P, which has, an estimated 35 to 45,000 users daily. With ZeroNet here, we're just really encroaching around maybe 2,000 users. But that's not to say that it won't become the most popular, second most popular darknet. It's very stable. I have very little issues with connecting with it. And as you can see, in a Windows environment, it's got even a great administrative view for it. Down in my my running applications there, I could see the relay with the ZeroNet as it exists. So I see my IP address, and then I see the actually the Tor circuit since it uses the Tor relay system. But it's a really good breakdown, in my opinion, because of the stability of it, because of the graphic user interface of it. I would not be surprised if in the next few years ZeroNet overtakes I2P as the second most popular darknet. I feel once they make the process of hosting sites on ZeroNet easier, or they find some way to bridge the Tor browser, integrate it into ZeroNet as a way to go to the .onion domains readily, I think that that will actually create a lot more people who want to use ZeroNet. Now, this is something that I feel is a little bit not discussed. And the dark web has grown exponentially in the past year alone. We saw from 2020 to 2021 the highest number of users on the dark web in history. Now, could that be said more people were working from home? There was a lot more people online than ever before. Yes, you could speculate that. But in the same respect, we saw more darknet markets. We saw more forums, shops dedicated to contraband rising as well. So it's really important to understand that the dark web is not going anywhere. Okay, and we can continue to sit either in law enforcement or the private sector. We can sit with these preconceived notions we have about the dark web and think that this is some sort of pseudoscience, that any investigation into the dark web is not going to be fruitful. That's not true. And I really implore you to become very familiar with the dark web, to become familiar with the current trends, things of that nature. So there are programs to assist you with your dark web investigations. Again, I'm not trying to sell you anything. This is merely for familiarity. So Cyber6Skill is one of those programs. They're an online-based platform, and they're what's called a dark web crawler. And what I would do for me if I needed to do an investigation to the dark web, you'll see these terms up there: NJ, New Jersey, that's where I live, and Fulls, Fullz. For those of you who don't investigate stuff on the dark web, Fulls is the term that is used for somebody's full workup, full background, whether that's my social security number, my address, my telephone number, and often my IP addresses associated with my online activity. So if I wanted to search somebody in the past month that is offering NJ and Fulls, I would nearly have to type that into the search assistant, and I could search across IQC, Telegram, specific forums, blogs, paste bins, club to card, so on and so forth. And I could find a vendor, the Daily Telegram Black Market Group. We have this actor here, Jack Sparrow. I guess that he's selling some sort of unemployment insurance benefits from the state of New Jersey, possibly a compromised account of somebody, or somebody who's deceased and he's using their social security number, so on and so forth. So this can be very important for me if I need to develop intelligence leads into who these people are that are selling this stuff. I know some of you might have had cases that involve Telegram before. It's not really a very fruitful area that will help you if you have cases involving Telegram, but people have presences off of Telegram as well. So if I really wanted to investigate Mr. Jack Sparrow here, I could try to find some correlation to other markets that he might have posted on other forums that might eventually lead me in the right direction of who this person is in the real world. Another seller, Blake seller, I guess, they're offering Texas, Utah, New Jersey, California Fulls, plus DL, plus United Kingdom Fulls, scam packages, so on and so forth. So this is all here daily. All this stuff gets updated multiple times a day with these threat actors that are posting this content. It's important to understand that the dark web and dark web related discussions, whether that's on Telegram or ICQ, so on and so forth, this stuff's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. So I would ask of you, if you have your cell phones, to please scan this QR code. I promise I will not take you to the dark web or infect your devices with any type of malicious malware. I want to show you something that is very passionate to me, that I'm very passionate about, something that's very near and dear to me, and that's my website, the UBIVIS Project. So I started the UBIVIS Project in 2021, and this is a site that is dedicated for both the general public as well as law enforcement to report those who are vending narcotics online. Specifically with overdoses here in the United States, between April 2020 and April 2021, we had the most overdose deaths in our country's history. Now, if you were to ask me, Kevin, how many of those overdose deaths were related to dark web purchases, I can't give you an answer because that data doesn't exist. Maybe that in and of itself is an issue, but in the same respect, there are so many people who are vending fake oxycodone pills online, so many people that are vending synthetic opioids online. And I created this site as a simple way for both the general public as well as law enforcement to report activity. So as a civilian, you can remain as anonymous as you want to be. We do not retain IP addresses. We don't require digital signatures. All that we really ask of is the vendor name, what narcotics they're vending, and the market or the presence that you see of them online. For law enforcement, it's really the same thing. All we require is a case number, if there was a fatal overdose attributed to this vendor, and way to contact you. So whatever information gets populated into the UBIVIS project site, we geographically locate fatal overdoses across the United States from the information that's inputted, and we like to put the vendor name attributed to that overdose as both a like a public service, right? Let's just say somebody wants to buy off of a vendor on a darknet market. This person claims that they're selling pharmaceutical grade opioids, and in reality, they're really selling some stuff that could kill you. If somebody were to come across the site and they were to see this, they'd be like, oh, this person is attributed to an overdose in this specific state. And why this is important, I feel, is because if somebody dies after they buy something from a vendor, they're not able to give negative feedback to that vendor. You can't see that. So if you want to think of it also as a way for people who want to buy drugs online to stay away from a specific vendor, that is very easy for you to see. We also offer help online, direct people in the right place if they need to overcome their vices, their addiction. So I thank you very much for your time today. I wanted to leave some time for some questions at the end if there were any. And that is my email, kevin@theubivisproject.org. If you ever have any questions or ever need any assistance, or maybe you have some intelligence about somebody who's doing something on the dark web, welcome to email me, and I will get back to you. I promise that. So with that being said, I'm going to try to get to some questions, if anybody has any.
There are no questions for you, Kevin. So that is the end of this session and Hackon for today. The Hackon team would like to thank you, Keven Hendricks, for this great presentation about the Darknet or dark web. And thanks to everyone who are watching. There are no questions for you, Kevin. So that is the end of this session and Hackon for today. The Hackon team would like to